You know what's crazy about marriage? How you can think you know someone completely and then they go and surprise you in the worst possible way. I'm Sophia. I'm 28. And up until a few months ago, I thought I had the perfect life figured out. Ethan and I had been married for 5 years. He's this ambitious software engineer, 35, successful, the kind of man who codes entire systems from scratch, just like his single father taught him to. He raised him and his siblings alone, juggling freelance gigs and night shifts, and he never forgot that grind. It turned him into this reliable, providing type who actually wanted to look after me, which, let's be real, was exactly what I craved. I quit my job about 3 years into our marriage. Why hustle when your husband pulls in solid income and genuinely pushes you to relax? Ethan never made me feel bad about it either. He'd say things like, "I want you to be at ease and you deserve to save her life." He even wired cash to my folks back in their quiet coastal village, presents, aid with their home repairs, whatever they required. My mom idolized him, called him the son she never had. But here's where it gets messy. Every couple of months, Ethan would pull me along to these tech networking mixers, upscale soirees thrown by his coworkers, packed with mid-career guys debating algorithms and their spouses faking interest. I'd grin and agree, act the devoted partner, but inside I was bored out of my mind. Ethan always insisted I come, though. It projects the right vibe, he'd explain. Shows I'm grounded, family-focused. I got the drill. High achievers need that polished facade, so I'd slip into a sharp outfit, chat lightly with the other partners, and tick off the minutes till we could bail. The pattern was choking me, though I never voiced it to a soul. We'd been attempting to start a family with no luck, which layered on this quiet strain to it all. Not that Ethan ever pushed me on it, but I sensed the unspoken hopes. His dad dropping gentle hints, my parents pondering when they'd hold grandkids. I felt like I was inhabiting someone else's existence, like I was just performing a part. The engineer's wife, the charming in-law, the woman who owned all she was meant to desire. But something was absent. This uneasy itch I couldn't ignore. That's when Ryan stepped into the frame. It was at one of those mixer events about 7 months back. I was off by myself, sipping a cocktail and eyeing Ethan charm the crowd when this seasoned guy came over. Salt and pepper hair at the edges, tailored blazer. He introduced himself as Ryan, a lead executive at one of the major tech consultancies. But here's the twist. He actually engaged me. Not about Ethan's projects, not about the forecast, but genuine dialogue. He inquired about my take on the region's latest innovation hubs, if I longed for my old career, how I spent my days. For the first time in ages, someone was regarding me as if I had my own ideas and insights. "You strike me as too sharp to just be window dressing," he said with this sly grin. It was bold, perhaps even out of line, but it made me feel visible in a way I hadn't in forever. We chatted for around 25 minutes before Ethan spotted us. He was courteous to Ryan, but I caught that possessive edge. Later in the car, he quizzed me on who I'd been with. I brushed it off as some random developer. Nothing major. But my pulse was thumping in a way that should have been my red flag. Ryan tracked me down online the following day. A straightforward follow request with a note. Loved our chat last evening. Keen to pick it up again sometime. I mulled over that note for nearly an hour before hitting accept. The messaging kicked off harmlessly. Morning check-ins, queries on my routine, swapping links to pieces he figured I'd like. He made me feel worldly, like the sort of woman who could dive into tech trends and urban design and global markets. Ethan and I hardly conversed anymore outside of practicalities, like whose turn for errands or when we'd drop by his dad, fitting around his coding sprints. In a matter of weeks, Ryan proposed we grab tea. "Strictly platonic," he assured. "I value your viewpoint on stuff." I knew it wasn't purely innocent, but I convinced myself it was fine. What harm in a pal who truly valued my intellect? That initial tea led to brunch the next week, then aperitifs beyond that. Ryan was suave, focused, and above all, he made me feel valued. He'd recall tiny bits from our talks, probe deeper on stuff I'd brought up. When I spoke, he tuned in instead of thumbing his device or scouting for bigger fish to connect with. I began anticipating his pings more than heading back to Ethan. started shaping my schedule around potential meetups, started fussing over my attire, my vibe, if I came across as captivating enough for this accomplished traveled guy who inexplicably saw me as intriguing. The intimate side built slowly, a brush on my shoulder mid-chat, leaning in nearer at cafes, the initial kiss in his vehicle after what was meant to be merely brunch. I rationalized it wasn't true betrayal since I still cared for Ethan. This was merely what I required for me, something that sparked life back into me. Ryan made me feel like the version of myself I'd envisioned, assured, alluring, worth the chase. With Ethan, I'd grown routine, foreseeable. With Ryan, I was enigmatic, electric. He'd message midday just to note he was musing over me. When had Ethan last done that? I was cautious about it, or so I believed. We'd rendezvous at inns on the outskirts. I'd erase our exchanges, spin detailed tales about outings, or catching up with acquaintances. Ethan was so wrapped in his deadlines that he scarcely clocked my plans anyway. For months, I felt like I was nailing it flawlessly. I had my secure setup with Ethan and this exhilarating hidden liaison with Ryan. The ideal combo. I wasn't damaging a soul. I repeated to myself that what Ethan didn't know wouldn't wound him. And I was even cheerier at home since I felt complete in another realm. But then arrived that evening that flipped it all. It was yet another mixer. This one at Marcus's place. He's some powerhouse who throws these bashes every quarter. Ryan would be attending, and we'd been messaging about stealing a private beat. The patio at Marcus's estate was vast with loads of hidden nooks. I mentioned to Ethan I needed a breather and ducked out. Ryan trailed shortly after, per our scheme. We located this tucked-away section of the grounds where the glow was faint, shielded by tall shrubs. It felt thrilling, risky, even poetic. We were locking lips, his fingers in my hair, when abruptly I heard Ethan's call slicing the night. "Sophia, Sophia, where'd you go?" Ryan vanished in a flash. Didn't glance back, just dashed to the rear entrance and melted into the shadows. I stood there solo, heart slamming, makeup likely askew, scrambling for words. When Ethan reached me, the doubt in his tone was clear. "What are you up to out here?" I've searched high and low. That's when I chose the path that would demolish it all. Rather than owning up, rather than spilling the truth, I burst into tears. Genuine ones, because I was truly freaked and terrified. Someone grabbed me. I wailed. This guy, I have no clue who. He pinned me here and began groping me. I was fighting to escape when you shouted my name. I saw Ethan's face shift from wary to guardian wrath. He instantly enveloped me in his arms, checking if I was injured, if the guy had gone further. The fib was landing so smoothly that I rolled with it. I was petrified. I murmured into his shirt. He fled when he heard you approach. I have no idea what might have gone down if you hadn't located me. Ethan was set to dial the cops right then. He aimed to scour the gathering, hunt this creep who'd attacked his wife. That's when real dread hit. I pleaded with him not to loop in the law, claimed I was too shaken for interrogations and exposure. I just craved heading home and burying it. He caved reluctantly, but I spotted this shielding fury swelling in him. My spouse, whom I'd been deceiving for months, was primed to dismantle anyone who'd harmed me. The remorse should have devoured me, but mainly I felt eased that he'd bought my tale. In the days after, Ethan couldn't drop it. He kept probing if I recalled more about my assailant, if I'd spot him in a lineup. He confided in his buddies, Alex and Jordan, about the incident, and they all fixated on nabbing this ghostly intruder who'd violated me. I attempted to dissuade their probe without raising flags. I just want to let it go, I'd insist. Obsessing isn't aiding my recovery, but Ethan was resolute on securing justice for me. He cherished me so deeply that he was game to play sleuth to defend my dignity. The twist was crushing. Here was my husband agonizing himself to track the man who'd wronged me, while I knew precisely who it was and what truly transpired. I witnessed him, forego rest over it, saw him eyeing every dude at later events with distrust, pondering if this might be the one who'd molested his wife, when he began flashing me pics of folks from the guest roster, testing for recognition. I had to feign ignorance of Ryan while my heart pounded wildly. There he was, polished and striking in his corporate profile pic, and I had to pretend I'd never laid eyes on him. Does he ring a bell? Ethan would press, scrutinizing my features. Nah, I'd fib. Like I said, it was pitch black, and I was too rattled for a clear view. The mess ballooned way past my wildest thoughts. Ethan and his crew were like hobbyist gumshoes, matching attendee lists, grilling Marcus on safeguards, striving to reconstruct who could have lurked in that patio. Then Marcus unleashed the revelation that wrecked my reality entirely. Why didn't you just clue me in on the actual events? He queried Ethan via call. I overheard both ends from the den. I've got surveillance feeds blanketing much of the outdoor area. I could have simply reviewed the tape. My gut plummeted. Surveillance feeds. Naturally, a mogul like Marcus would have top-tier monitoring on his grounds. I'd been so fixated on the gloom and seclusion of that spot that I overlooked we could be caught on cam. Ethan headed to Marcus's the subsequent night with Alex and Jordan to sift the recordings. I remained at home, stalking the rooms like a trapped beast, aware my whole universe was on the brink of imploding. The feeds missed the precise nook where Ryan and I were. There was a dead zone exactly there, but they snagged me strolling into the patio solo, appearing calm and intentional. They nabbed Ryan tailing me moments later, and they got a crystal-clear image of his mug as he bolted when Ethan yelled. When Ethan returned that night, I knew right away he was onto me. His expression was granite hard, his actions measured in a manner that scared me worse than any outburst. We tracked him down, he stated softly. The guy from the patio. I tried holding my facade. Seriously? You gonna file charges? His name's Ryan. He's a top exec at Harlan & Partners. Wed, 3 children. Ethan's tone was unnervingly steady. We reached out to him today. My throat tightened, but I forged ahead with the deceit. What did he claim? Did he own up to what he pulled on me? Oh, he owned it all right. Ethan's gaze was glacial. Every bit of your half-year fling. The space whirled. Ryan had spilled it all. Not the attack, but the romance. He detailed our tea sessions, our getaway stays, our chats. Cornered between confessing an affair or facing assault claims, he'd opted for honesty. I tried to patch it, tried to insist Ryan was fabricating to dodge his real crime, but Ethan shut me down. Enough, he commanded. Just enough. I know it all, Sophia. The schedule, the spots you hooked up, details only a lover would know. It's done. That could have wrapped it. A discreet showdown, separation docs, dividing, holdings. But Ethan had another angle. We're heading to your folks this weekend, he declared the next dawn, like our dynamic was unchanged. I was baffled, but optimistic. Perhaps he sought reconciliation. Maybe he figured my family could bridge us. I'd always been Mommy's darling, and my parents worshipped Ethan. If anyone could mend us, it'd be them. The trip to my seaside hometown was strained but civil. Ethan bantered lightly, inquired on my parents' well-being, acted nearly routine. I started believing that possibly, just possibly, we could surmount this. The thing with Ryan had been an error, a brief slip. Certainly our 5-year union merited the effort. My parents were overjoyed to host us as usual. Dad whipped up a feast. Mom uncorked a vintage she'd stashed. They fussed over Ethan like their own, quizzing his latest ventures, thanking him once more for the monetary boosts he'd provided over time. Post-meal, we gathered in their cozy den when Ethan noted he had something to share with all. He fished out his tablet and linked it to their vintage set. I want you to view some clips from an event we hit lately, he said evenly. Something went down that night you ought to be aware of. My insides twisted, but I still couldn't grasp his scheme until the surveillance footage rolled on the display. There I was, striding deliberately into Marcus's patio. There was Ryan shadowing me. The timestamp indicated we were isolated for close to 20 minutes before Ethan's voice echoed calling my name, then Ryan sprinting off like a culprit. The bewilderment on my parents' faces was excruciating to behold. They hadn't pieced it together yet. Then Ethan cued the follow-up clip, the one he'd taped of Ryan owning their liaison. Ryan's words echoed through my parents' den, outlining our bond in specifics. conceding they'd been involved for months, clarifying he'd freaked when Ethan discovered them, and allowed me to spin the assault yarn to shield them both. The hush afterward was thunderous. My dad's jaw dropped. My mother's expression cycled through shock, realization, letdown, and ultimately revulsion. "Sophia," my mom breathed, "what is this? What have you done?" I tried justifying, tried downplaying it, but the proof was glaring on their screen. Not just had I strayed on the man who'd been a saint to our clan, but I'd been set to trash an innocent guy's name with bogus claims to mask my slip. "It wasn't meant to unfold like this," I blubbered, tears cascading. "It just spiraled." But even as I uttered it, I knew how lame it rang. No rationale for my actions, no alibi to render it acceptable. Ethan drew out a folder and passed it to my mom. "These are separation papers. I figured you should learn your daughter squandered our marriage for a nobody who signified zilch to them." The hurt in my mom's stare cut deeper than Ethan's ire. This woman who'd nurtured me, who'd beamed when I wed a driven and generous soul, was gazing at me like a stranger. "You were ready to wreck that man's existence," my mom uttered deliberately. "Let him face assault charges 'cause you got busted straying." "Mommy, I was frightened, please." Her tone was cutting in a way I'd never encountered. "No excuses. What you did was vile." My dad was weeping now, but not over me. He eyed Ethan with pure pity, pure sorrow. "I'm so sorry," he kept murmuring to him. "I'm so sorry she pulled this on you." Ethan stayed utterly composed the entire time. He outlined how he'd strived to be a solid partner, how he'd backed our family in cash and spirit, how he'd never offered cause to question his devotion, but this treachery was beyond pardon or erasure. I implored him to skip the split. Dropped to my knees there in my parents' den, vowing I'd cut ties with Ryan, that I'd do whatever to mend it. Even my dad tried mediating, urging Ethan to mull therapy, to grant me one more shot. But his resolve was ironclad. "I poured everything into her," he said softly. "My affection, my faith, my aid for her family, and she returned it by creeping with another, and then fabricating in the most vicious manner imaginable." He packed his gear and departed that night. I was stranded in my old family home with my parents, who could hardly meet my eyes. The shame in their gazes was overwhelming, but not as much as the dawning that I'd forfeited the greatest part of my world for a guy who'd sold me out the instant it got dicey. The split process was quick and harsh. Ethan's attorney had prepped thoroughly. Turns out the bulk of our key assets were under his father's title, a fact I'd been clueless about. The condo, the rental units, even his ride. I snagged a modest payout from our shared account, but it was scarcely livable. Meanwhile, the tale of my deeds rippled through my parents' tight-knit village like a storm. In a spot where folks know all, my indiscretion and phony claim became the talk of the season. I couldn't hit the market without sensing glares, murmurs trailing me. My parents still cared, but our bond was irrevocably altered. They were mortified, stung by the spillover. My mom, who'd boasted of her thriving son-in-law to all ears, now shunned community meetups altogether. 9 months on, I'm still crashing in my old room, scraping by on a gig job that hardly pays the bills, seeing my world crumble bit by bit. I learned via shared contacts that Ryan's partner also ditched him after uncovering he'd been habitually unfaithful across their union. His professional life tanked too. Evidently, cheating rumors don't sit well in buttoned-up corporate scenes, but the real kicker is watching how Ethan thrives sans me. Via feeds and common pals, I catch wind of his triumphs, his joy, his fresh romance, with a woman who truly merits him. She's no trope. She's a thriving consultant on her own, someone who cherishes her blessings rather than ditching them for fleeting highs. I want to resent him for airing my dirt like that, for shaming me before my family, for claiming it all and stranding me empty-handed. But in the dead of night, solo in this space where I once fantasized my tomorrow, I face facts. I possessed it all. A man who adored me without strings, monetary stability, a clan that esteemed me, a cozy existence many would envy. And I raised it because I was restless. Because I chased thrills. Because I figured I warranted beyond what I'd built. The romance was rotten enough, but the made-up claim was beyond redemption. I was set to let a blameless man crumble rather than own my fallout. That's not who I believed I was. But clearly it's me when cornered. So yeah, I strayed. I deceived. I was prepared to demolish someone's world to preserve mine. And now I'm footing the bill in ways I never foresaw. Ethan claimed his reckoning, and I got precisely what I earned. Truth is, I'm not remorseful for the romance proper. I'm sorry I was exposed. I'm sorry for the fallout. But those months with Ryan were the most vibrant I'd been in ages. And I can't force regret for that rush, even aware of its toll. Maybe that paints me monstrous. Maybe I merit all that's befallen. All I know is I plunged from abundance to void.